Hey everyone, how's it going? Matthew Bailey Media here, and welcome to another Top Things video. And I apologize in advance for if my voice doesn't sound too good in this video, mainly because I'm kind of congested right now. But I'm gonna try my best for you guys to do this video, and of course, this being the top 15 best movies of 2025. Yep, it's just about the end of the year now, and as of this recording, that is, and I'm definitely excited for this list because honestly, some of these movies I wasn't originally planning on seeing or that I didn't even see in the theaters at all. And again, I wasn't planning on seeing some of these, but then after seeing them, I decided, you know what, these actually deserve to be on the list. So for now, I'm going to give you my two honorable mentions that ended up on this list. Those, of course, being Thunderbolts and The Electric State from Netflix. That's right, these two films were the two honorable mentions that ended up on this list. So without further ado, let's get into the top 15 movies of 2025. So, kicking off at number 15, this movie, I was kind of surprised that this even managed to make the list because when we know how bad the last movie ended up being, I thought, you know what, I was kind of surprised that this movie ended up on this list, and that is, of course, Jurassic World Rebirth. Yep, Jurassic World Rebirth is the fourth Jurassic World movie in the franchise. Now, unfortunately, its predecessor, Jurassic World Dominion, yeah, we all know how that movie turned out. That movie ended up in my worst movies of, I believe it was 2022. So I was kind of surprised that that the next movie after it just barely managed to crack the top 15 of this year. And I gotta say, Scarlett Johansson, her role in this movie I thought was good, and it's nice that they sort of still connected it to what happened in the last film. But I wonder what the heck they're gonna do. Like what are they gonna do going forward with this franchise? Because it sounds like the one thing they did in the third movie was the whole pharmaceutical properties thing with dinosaurs' DNA, and I thought, you know what, maybe it would make. Apparently, they needed the DNA from certain species in this movie to somehow do that, and that's what they did. They managed to get the DNA, and I wonder, like, what are they going to do going forward? But I will say the way the story played out was definitely worth the wait, and so for number 15, I gotta go with Jurassic World Rebirth. So for number 14, I have the movie Elio. Yep, the Disney Pixar movie that came out this year. And I will say, Elio, I was a little nervous at first because when you look at the past history with Disney Pixar films, the originals over the last 5 years have been somewhat hit and miss. But with Elio, I thought it was kind of cool the way they portrayed this um, movie, and the best part about it was no political messaging was featured in it, which I think is why I think it was like one of the better Pixar movies over the last 5 years. But honestly, I'm really looking forward to the next two Pixar movies coming out, which is one more original being Hoppers, and the next one being, of course, a fifth Toy Story movie. If y'all saw my teaser trailer reaction for that, pretty crazy, right? But like I said, Elio I think is a much better movie than people give it credit for. So for number 14, I gotta go with Elio. So for number 13, I gotta go with a movie that I only just saw the first two films to this franchise about a year or so ago. Technically, I started watching them in the last year, and I gotta say, I was curious about this movie, and that is, of course, Now You See Me 3, also known as Now You See Me, Now You Don't. And I gotta say, this movie was definitely worth the wait. I mean, the way they do these magic tricks, it seems like they're even hinting at another installment to the franchise eventually. I'm not sure what they're going to do, but um, again, I don't want to give away any spoilers to the movie because for those of you who haven't seen the film, it definitely was something that I was really curious about. And I will say, I think I mentioned it in my review that this movie is sort of like out of all three movies, the second one I think is my least favorite, and then this one follows right ahead of that than the first movie in my mind. But I gotta say, Now You See Me is a really good franchise, and I'm curious to see where they go from here. But for number 13, I gotta go with Now You See Me 3. So for number 12, this is a movie that I was really looking forward to, especially after the last movie came out. I believe it was in 2022. So funny enough, it was the same year that Jurassic World Dominion came out. But this movie, for last movie, I thought was great, and that this movie I thought was even not as good, but still really good. That being, of course, The Bad Guys 2, another DreamWorks movie that I gotta say, really curious how well they did this franchise. And there's two of the characters from the first movie. We get a lot more like depth in between their characters. I'm not going to say who, but you probably know who I'm talking about. And there's even a twist mid-credit scene that I didn't see coming. And it sounds like they're going to lead into The Bad Guys 3, so I'm curious how that's going to go. But with this movie, I thought the characters were so much better developed in a way and to lead into the future. So, and I've never read the book series for this, so I'm curious how well they're going to do the third film. But for number 12, I got to go with The Bad Guys 2. So for number 11, this movie almost managed to crack the top 10 for me, but honestly, I thought it was going to do well in my honest opinion, even though I never saw the Broadway version of it. But that is, of course, Wicked for Good, also known as Wicked Part 2. Now, last year when I did my best films of 2024 list, I did have Wicked, I think, in like the top 5 for crying out loud. But with this movie, it didn't even crack the top 10 for me, but I still thought it was an okay film. I mean, I never saw the Broadway musical, so I really wouldn't know what happened, but some characters I was kind of surprised with how their stories ended up. And of course, because this movie's only about Glinda and Elphaba, Dorothy is supposed to be in this movie a lot, but she hardly isn't. Slight spoiler there, but I think that's because she wasn't like that in the Broadway musical. So I guess that makes sense, but the way they ended this movie, it makes it seem like there's going to be a third movie, even though this is supposed to be the last movie. So I don't know what they're going to do from here, but I hope they don't ruin whatever the actual Broadway musical did. But for number 11, I got to go with Wicked for Good. So for number 10, so we're now into the top 10. For my number 10, I got to go with a film that this is a movie I didn't think I was going to be seeing, but after seeing the trailer in the theaters so many times throughout 2024, I thought, you know what, maybe I should watch this movie. And that is, of course, The Unbreakable Boy. Now, for those of you who don't know, this movie is apparently based on a true story, as far as I'm aware. And it actually had the main kid in this movie is kind of like me in a way, where he is a kid who has autism, and but his autism is a little bit more like higher than me, I think, in a way, in some manner. I'm not sure exactly how that works, but because him and me both have autism, the way he interacts with people in public, especially it's kind of like how I was when I was growing up at his age. I was in sort of the same boat as him. I mean, the way I interacted with certain people that weren't my family, it was just kind of weird, but the way that they portrayed this film, I thought was really interesting. And I gotta say, it's nice seeing these types of movies come out, and that's why this movie managed to break the top 10 for me. And so for number 10, I gotta go with The Unbreakable Boy. So for number 9, this is another movie I wasn't originally planning on watching, but then I thought, you know what, maybe I'll give it a try. And that is, of course, Sketch. Now, Sketch is a movie that stars actor Tony Hale as a sort of single dad who who's trying his best to help his kids get through life, and unfortunately one of his kids has like this thing, has a special book that apparently she like, or they find this lake that's nearby, and it somehow has magical properties, and they accidentally fall, and her notebook falls into the water, and it causes all her creations to come to life, and they have to fight them off. Honestly, I thought it was an interesting story. I mean, it was definitely, I feel like it's on par with how good the Unbreakable Boy was in my mind. That's how good I thought it was. So for number 9, I gotta go with Sketch. So for number 8, this is the one movie that, again, I mentioned in my worst movies of the year list that this movie was going to be on the best films list because they are so far apart with how well they did that, or how bad you couldn't tell the difference. And that is, of course, the live action adaptation of Lilo and Stitch. Yeah, so going back to what I said about Snow White, which was the number one worst movie of the year, in my opinion, the reason why Lilo and Stitch is on this list, even if it's not at number one, it's still in the top 10 for best movies of the year, in my mind. And the reason why I loved Lilo and Stitch way more than Snow White is because of a few things. One, the casting was almost on point. Two, they did not make it political like Snow White was when it comes to the dialogue and the reason why they look the way they do and all sorts of bull crap. They didn't do none of that in this movie. And I even hear that the live action sequel that's going to be coming out for this movie is actually going to see Chris Sanders, I believe, who voices Stitch in the original film, and he voices him here too. He's not only going to still voice Stitch in the sequel, but he's also going to be coming back to direct it again, from what I'm hearing. If I'm wrong about that, let me know in the comments. But now, so it seems like this movie had a way better marketing campaign than Snow White did, and that's why so many people went to see it, to the point where it made $1 billion. Crazy, right? But for number 8, I gotta go with Lilo and Stitch. So for number 7, I gotta go with, of course, Zootopia 2. Yep, you knew this movie was gonna make it somewhere on the list. Zootopia 2, I thought, was a great follow-up to Zootopia, even though it came out like over 9 years ago. It's funny, it hasn't even been a decade, and we get a sequel to both Zootopia 2, so for Zootopia, and Moana got a sequel last year, which I thought was crazy. And speaking of Moana, we're about to get a live-action adaptation of that next year, which will mark 10 years since the original animated movie came out. So that's going to be interesting to see how well that movie does. But with Zootopia 2, I love the way they did this movie. And if y'all ever go back and watch a video I did back in 2019 or 2020, the start of 2020, I believe it was, I did do a sort of random movie review to a fan-made sequel to Zootopia called Return to Zootopia. And I will say, when it comes to the two storylines, I think this movie still kind of outperforms that fan-made film. But I kind of do want to see some elements of that fan-made film be brought into the third movie, especially with the supposed like clues and rumors circulating that Judy and Nick are gonna eventually get romantically involved, not just as partners in the ZPD. But honestly, that's gonna be an interesting situation. And we're supposed to be getting flying creatures in this third movie, like birds and stuff. We got reptiles in this movie, so curious how they're gonna depict birds. But for number 7, I gotta go with Zootopia 2. So for number 6, I gotta say, for number 6, this is a movie I didn't even see in the theaters, and I wasn't planning on watching it, but after hearing so many good things about it, I thought, you know what, maybe I should find a way to watch it, and I'm glad I did, that being, of course, Weapons. Now, Weapons is a movie that is sort of I don't know exactly how to describe it, but it's sort of like it basically stars as like it's being told by so many different perspectives up until the end where we see everything culminate into one epic finale. And I gotta say, the way they did that with the characters, I thought was insane. And I kind of like how everything went down. And I gotta say, this isn't the only movie that's on this list though that I originally wasn't planning on seeing, and it ended up being really good. But for number six, I gotta go with Weapons. So here we are now in the top five, with number five being, of course, the live action adaptation of How to Train Your Dragon. That's right. How to Train Your Dragon is the first non Disney related animated film to get a live action adaptation, if I'm not mistaken, especially when it comes to a company like DreamWorks. Like, this is DreamWorks' first ever attempt at a live action remake to one of their animated classics, and I gotta say, definitely seems like it was like one of the better ones than a lot of the recent live action remakes that have come out. Like I said, Snow White, I think was much better. Or not much better, what am I saying? This was way better than Snow White. That's what I meant to say. And honestly, Snow White is not even comparable to this movie. How to Train Your Dragon was, I think, the much better live action remake of the three that I mentioned on both lists. So for number five, I gotta go with How to Train Your Dragon. So for number four, this is the other movie that I originally wasn't planning on seeing in the theaters, but I thought to myself, you know what? This is something I think I should get into. That being, of course, Sinners. That's right. Michael B. Jordan plays these two twin brothers who grew up. I forgot what year this took place, but supposedly it involves like people's mistakes being made, vampires, and all sorts of craziness, which I thought was insane. And the way they ended it was even more crazy. But again, just like Weapons, this movie was something I was not expecting at all. It was a really good film. And I'm hoping that we get more films like this in the coming years. But for now, I gotta go with number four being Sinners. So for number three, I gotta say I was kind of surprised by this, but for number three, I gotta go with The Fantastic Four: First Steps. That's right, Fantastic Four is the one movie of the year that managed from the MCU that made it onto the list, and even in the top three too. It's crazy because you would think that out of all the different Fantastic Four adaptations, which there's only been really two other adaptations, three movies altogether, not including this one. But this, I think, in my mind, is the best one of all four of them. So, and the worst one by far is the one that came out 10 years ago, which most people nicknamed Fan Four Stick. Crazy, right? But with this movie, it really seems like they're trying to get back into the original like groove of how the MCU was before during the Infinity Saga, and now it makes me like really hyped for Avengers Doomsday next year. And I hear that the teaser trailer will be coming out soon, hopefully, so I'll definitely try to get my reaction to that at some point. But for number three, I gotta go with the Fantastic Four: First Steps. So for number two, just like with the Fantastic Four, this is another superhero movie that I was really hoping would do well, and thank God it did, and that is James Gunn's adaptation of Superman. That's right. This is the first movie in James Gunn's newly formed DC universe, or DCU, I guess is the better word for it, and I will say the way that he portrayed Superman was, in my mind, better than what Man of Steel was. That's just my opinion. But honestly, I'm really looking forward to the next movie that he's doing, which I believe is the Supergirl film. And then I think there's another film coming out after that. I don't know which one it was, but I guess we'll find out. But with Superman, James Gunn knows what he's doing when it comes to doing superhero characters well. He did well with the Guardians of the Galaxy team, and now he's the head of the DC universe, and I'm really looking forward to see what he does. So for number 2, I gotta go with Superman. And finally, for my number 1 best movie of the year, you already know what it's probably gonna be, but I'll just say it anyway. My number 1 film of the year is, of course, Avatar: Fire and Ash. That's right, the third installment to the James Cameron Avatar franchise, and I mean, I will say this is the weaker one of the 3 movies, and I think the second one by far is my favorite. I think me, my cousin Tyler Bailey, and my friend Matthew Davis Media all agree that the second film, I think, is the best one of the 3. But with this one, I still think it was really good. I mean, you know I love James Cameron and how he portrays the Avatar films. I mean, nobody could do them better than him. But I mean, and it sounds like if this movie doesn't do as well in the box office as the last film did, he said he will consider holding a press conference explaining what he's going to do for the future, because he says it seems like he already filmed like a quarter of Avatar 4, and he just needs, because there's supposed to be like a time jump supposedly, so we'll see how things go there. But honestly, Avatar Fire and Ash I thought was a great way to finish off a sort of a trilogy of stories in a way, and I'm really hoping that they continue with this franchise. So for number 1, I gotta go with Avatar Fire and Ash. So there you have it, guys. That is my top 15 list of the 2025 movies of the year. So like I said, the next few videos you're probably going to be seeing from me come January. I am going to be going on another vacation during January, so you may see some more some videos of me going down there, and they're definitely going to be much longer, especially because now I can go into Epic Universe more than one day, so I can try to stay in the park a little bit longer now, especially with the weather not being as bad during the month of January. So keep an eye out for those videos in January, and as always, I will see all of you guys in the next video.